Hello everyone, welcome back to the Japan Archive. We are back with Kibi's adventure in China as we said we were going to do. We took a bit of a mental health break. How are you doing, Heather?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little sleepy. We're recording late at night. I'm excited to go to bed soon. How are
Not for
you?
the podcast, you're just excited for the sleep later.
And I am, of course, very excited for our podcast as well. How are you, Thomas?
I'm pretty good as well. I'm sat in my hot box to work on the sound.
You need the tent.
Yes, I should have bought. So randomly went to, where did I go? Where was it? Yodobashi Camera in Akihabara to look at some computer stuff. And for some bizarre reason, they just had an entire computer setup just in a tiny tent that you would take to the beach. I don't know why that was there, but it was there. And ever since, Heather regrets me not buying it for my new setup. But I prefer my little cave of blankets and screens to stop the echo. It's been working well these past few weeks, I think.
Just don't fry it in July and August and September when it gets hot.
Well, then let's get on with the show before I combust into flames, shall we? So, we talked about Minister Kibi a little bit, coming from the random yokai I came across. The candlestick demon, Todaiki, and in that picture there was a depiction of a Go board, which was like a Japanese board game. And they thought that this was a nod to Minister Kibi, who was another man who traveled to China, like the guy who got turned into the yokai and got trapped in China for quite some time. So, the text of this narrative has come down to us from two different sources. One is from something called a Kodan Sho, which I have not been able to find much about it online in English. I've managed to. I'll keep managing to go down rabbit holes that take me to very niche things that are not in English yet. But luckily, I found some journal articles online, which we're using for today, 3 different ones. So one of the story, like I said, has come down from the Kodan Show, and the other is actually the writings that has been put in between sections on the scroll itself. So we have the story that's written on the scroll and also the account from the Kodan Show. And the Kodan Show, also known as the OA Conversations, which I kind of like the name of. It's an old text written by Oe no Masafusa, who lived between 1041 and 1111. And the scroll itself, it comes from around the end of the 12th century. Oh, well, the 12th century, yes. And yeah, this scroll has connections to Minister Kibi, who went as an envoy to China. Kibi no Makibi was his full name. He lived from 693 to 775, and he was one of many Japanese people who did go to China at this time as envoys. Now, he first went there in 716, and after his return to Japan the first time in 735, he became a prominent figure at court for his knowledge in Chinese learning. And so he was appointed to the university, the Imperial University, and was tutor to the princess who would later become Empress Koken. And then later in 752, he was once again sent to China as vice minister. And it is this specific tale that we're going to look at today. Now, this scroll has long been, is now housed in the Boston Museum of Arts. They seem to have a lot of Japanese art and scroll work there. So they've said that this particular scroll has always been held in high esteem, and it was initially owned by the Sakai family, who had been lords of the Wakasa province all the way from the 16th century. We know from a specific document called the Kambun Gyoki, which was an imperial diary from the 15th century, we know that this particular scroll is mentioned in the year 1441, where it was at the time held in the Hachimangu Shrine at Matsunaga in Wakasa Province. The scroll itself has been traditionally ascribed to a man known as Kasuga Mitsunaga, who was one of the great artist figures at his time. He's also attributed to have done many other famous pieces of art, such as the Tomo no Dainagon scrolls, the Nenju Gyoji scrolls, the Storybook of Hungry Demons, which I now want to read, as well as the Scroll of the Hells, and the Storybook of Disease.
Well, that's an interesting range.
Yes, I'm very interested in the Storybook of Diseases. I'm I'm wondering how
Yeah.
you can make a Storybook of Disease.
I mean, is it kind of like the little like they still was popular for a while, but they had little plushies of diseases and internal organs.
Maybe there's like a pop-up in the book, or those things where it's like you can move pieces to like show how the disease things, or like you can move bone. I don't know. It sounds fascinating. I
It's
really want
it,
to find it and read it, but probably it's not going to have an English version just yet. I don't think it's very
no,
niche.
no. Oh, maybe a wee bit.
Yeah. Going on to this guy, it seems that some people think this work was actually done by someone who was his contemporary from around the time. This guy was an originator of a new style of racy figurine composition, apparently, and so it's thought that someone was inspired by his style and did it themselves. Would you like to hear about his ordeal in China?
Why, yes, of course I would.
So this story is, in essence, a translation of the story as it is put forth on the scroll, as well as supplementary information that is also found in the Kodansho, which I've mentioned. The Minister Kibi went to China. While acquiring knowledge there, he became proficient too in various gentlemanly accomplishments. He had both broad learning and quick intelligence. The men of China felt humiliated before him. Hence they planned together in secret, saying, "There is something which makes us very uneasy. We are not inferior to him in ordinary things. Yet this Japanese envoy has come. He has had to go up into the tower and is now staying there. Our plot must not be allowed to reach his ears. Moreover, many men have stayed in that tower, but it is hard to exist there. We must go into the tower and try out our scheme, but to kill him would certainly be disloyal. However, if he were to return to his own land, that would not be to our good, and yet if he were to remain, that too would be a reproach for us." So they argued and made him stay in the tower. About midnight, the rain was falling and the wind was blowing. Kibi could even feel his hair stand on end. And just then a demon came peering in from the direction of the northwest. Kibi made a magic sign and so hid himself. He could not be seen by the demon, so inquired, "What kind of thing are you?" "I am the messenger of the ruler of the land of Japan. Royal affairs are not to easily be influenced. Why are you peeking in here, demon?" The demon replied, "This is most fortunate. I too came over here as a Japanese envoy sent to China. I should like to have a talk with you." And so Kibi answered, "If you wish to talk with me, you must change your demon form before entering." The demon went away and came back with his proper robes and hat. Kibi then granted him an interview. The demon spoke first. "I was a Japanese envoy sent to China. Do my descendants, who are the members of the Abe clan, still exist? I should like to hear about them. Up until now I have not been able to. I came over here as an ambassador, and was once shut up in this same tower. Being given no food, I was starved to death, and became a demon such as you see me now. I live in this tower. I have no desire to harm people, but those who see me inevitably meet their death. Thus, though I have often wanted to talk over the affairs of our land, I could get no reply. Today I have fortunately met you. I am most delighted. Do my descendants maintain their rank?" When Kibi had told him in detail of their present circumstances, the demon was even more delighted. In gratitude, he said, "I would like to tell you everything about this land." The minister Kibi rejoiced and answered, That will be invaluable information. As he spoke, dawn was just about breaking, and the demon went away again. That morning, the Chinese opened up the tower and brought in food for Kibi. Seeing Kibi unharmed, they were much surprised. They spoke together, saying, "This messenger from Japan may be a man of most unusual intellect, but let us have him read some composition and laugh at his mistakes." The demon, who overheard this plan, came and told Kibi. Kibi inquired what kind of book it was. The demon reported that it was a book difficult for people even in their own land to read, and that it was called the Wen Husan. The minister then asked if it would be possible for the demon to hear it, and so to inform him about it. The demon replied that although he could not do so, he would like to accompany Kibi and go to the place where people were discussing it, and in that way listen to it. But he added, "Since the door of the tower is shut, how are we going to get out?" Kibi replied that he knew the art of flying. They left together by a crack in the door and went to the imperial palace, where scholars were discussing this particular book. Here they overheard some 30 scholars who were spending the whole night reading aloud from the books. Then they returned. The demon asked if Kibi had been able to hear it all. Kibi said that he had, and asked the demon if he could search for and give him 10 volumes of some old calendar. Thereupon the demon sought out and brought them to Kibi. Kibi took them and wrote out 3 or 4 pages each from passages here and there in the 10 volumes of the first part of this book, and scattered them about in the tower. 1 or 2 days later, one of the scholars acting as the Chinese imperial messenger came to the tower bearing the 30 volumes of this particular book, with which to examine Kibi. On seeing odd passages from this book scattered about the tower, the Chinese were amazed and asked Kibi how he got these books. Kibi said that in his land of Japan, they were called the Wen Huasan, and that it was a work which everyone had to recite. The Chinese were astounded, and just as he was about to take the work back with him, Kibi said, "Let us compare your books with the ones that I have." By this scheme, he took the books away. Then once more the Chinese officials had a discussion. They said, "He may have intelligence, but he hasn't skill in gentlemanly accomplishments too." They planned to try him out in a game of war. They agreed. "This Japanese can play with the white pieces, and we will play with the black." By means of this game, they schemed together to kill the messenger from Japan. The demon reported this state of affairs to Kibi. When the minister had heard this, he inquired what kind of a game it was, and was told that there were 361 intersections, 9 of which formed positions called sages' eyes. The minister spent the whole night gazing at the crossbeams of the ceiling and working out a strategy. The next day, in accordance with the Chinese scheme, skilled players were sent out to play against him. However, in playing the game, there was neither victory nor defeat. At this point, Kibi stole one of the black pieces of the Chinese and swallowed it. And so just when they were contesting the issue, the Chinese were defeated. This seemed very strange indeed. When they counted up the pieces, they were incomplete. Accordingly, when this had been divined upon, it was decreed that the missing piece had been stolen and swallowed. After quarreling a great deal with Kibi, they made him take a dose of kariroku cathartic. But just as he was about to discharge the piece, Kibi again performed some magic and did not do so. Thus, in the end, he won the game. The Chinese later become aware that Kibi has been helped by a demon, and one of their priests performs a magic rite. Kibi's friend, Abe no Nakamaru, which was the name of the demon, is now helpless to aid him. The new test that was to come was a strange poetry game where the words which compose it are arranged in a maze-like order. He was dumbfounded and prayed to the god of Japan. Just when he was most in despair, a spider fell down from the roof, and by reading the words in the order that the spider rambled them to him, he succeeded. And so the Chinese now decided to starve Kibi to death. Kibi thereupon resorts to one more final act of magic. He asks for a checkerboard. The demon brings it. Kibi then covers the dice that come with the game over with a shaker, and as he does so, There just happens to be an eclipse of the sun and the moon. The Chinese are utterly terrified by him at this point. Chinese diviners are again relied upon, and they point to Kibi as the influence of this eclipse, which would now bring about new catastrophes. When they inquire of Kibi, he says that he knows nothing about it, but that he will happily pray to the gods of Japan. He reveals that if he could be sent back to Japan, there would be no reason why the sun and moon would not reappear in the sky of China. Word is sent from the emperor that therefore Kibi is to leave China at once. And as soon as Kibi removes the shaker from the dice, the sun and the moon come out once again, and Kibi was allowed to return home to Japan from the tower. And that's the tale of Kibi in China, or at least as much that I have been able to find translated into English for now. I do agree. I feel that some of this maybe is very summarized from the sound of it, but it's nonetheless a very interesting story. Hopefully one day maybe something is published which tells the tale more in full. I still found it very interesting. And as we said when we first announced we were going to do this episode, the theme of this year just...
Yeah, we're going back there again.
We're going back there again. However, he did use his magic and didn't actually go through with the laxative.
Like you do. That's an interesting tale. And it seems a little familiar.
Familiar?
Something. There's.
Did you too go to China and get locked in a tower?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, but the whole being trapped and having to use, wits and magic to get out of a situation where the people who are capturing you expect to win everything, but then the captor ends up winning. It's a familiar story. I think it's got a more of seems like a little bit of a universal theme. Maybe that's where I'm pulling it from.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a story you'd heard in Japan, but probably there's comparisons in Western literature definitely that we've come across. But so I think it's so. Oh no, sorry, go on.
Okay, you go.
No.
I was gonna ask, how old is this translation, by the way?
This particular journal that I got it from is a journal article written by the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. So it was a translation made by the museum itself, and it comes from 1933.
Okay. I was definitely feeling that we had a little bit of a historical context for some of the way some things were phrased. So I was thinking it had to be close to turn of, last century, not this century.
And there are other things that have been written about the scroll a little bit closer to our modern time, but even then it's like 1968, again by the Boston Museum. So it's definitely something very niche. One item in one museum that's only seems to be written about by the museum itself. Therefore, there's not many journals about it. There is not much information about it, especially the full story. Even Wikipedia is a very summarized story of events, which is a shame. I feel that it would make a very interesting story if completely translated in full, or maybe it actually is, because if it's the writing that's also on the scroll alongside, there would not be much space to elaborate. It may have been a story that people just knew of back then.
Yeah.
But now, apparently, we have to research Abe no Nakamaru, because he also went to China and ended up turning into a demon in the exact same tower. So I wonder if there is a story.
I would be interested to hear about that. And then also, I'm assuming maybe about his family as well, because the demon was very happy to hear about his family. So obviously maybe something a lot went on with them as well.
I should say, now that I think about it, the translation of demon, it has just been translated from Oni. It wasn't like a generic monster that they didn't have a name for in this story. Like, it is specifically said to have been an Oni in Japanese.
This was really an interesting story. And that's the other thing I was going to say. The game Go, do you know much about that?
Is Othello the same as Go?
Do you know what's funny? I know more about Go than I know about Othello.
I have played Othello with my student, and yeah, it's the case. Everyone, one is black, one is white.
Yeah.
You can turn pieces over depending on where you put them down. Maybe it's like a children's version. I'm not sure. So I know the concept of it. I'm not good at it. My students always beat me, even though they're like 6 years old. But whatever.
Oh, I did a quick really fast search, and it's similar.
Mm.
And apparently it's also similar to something called Reversey, which is a British
I do
game.
not know Reversey. Is it? It's British? Okay,
It
sure.
yeah. Yeah.
I'll say I don't know it.
1890s.
Maybe my mom will chime in and tell me that
I
she
don't
knows
know.
it. I will report back.
1890s, so I don't
Oh,
want you to, she probably doesn't maybe know either.
yeah, she's not
I'm
that old.
assuming.
Like,
Oh, oh goodness.
oh, she sent me an update on. There's recently another article has been published about the
Oh.
eugenics that we talked about. So we shall have to do an
Ah.
updated bonus on that because yes, there was more people than, let's just say, younger people than we initially thought. Also were subjected to it.
Well, I will looking to that update. So looking forward is
Looking to
not
it. You'll be
not
looking to it when it arrives.
yes, I'm looking forward to it seems way too not
I can't wait to learn about eugenics. No, it's not.
no, I
It's not
don't. No.
something you
No.
cheer on for. But that is my story for today. I enjoyed it. It's something very different. We've never had something based in China before. Like I said, I do wish it had more to it. But I kind of enjoy when I find these random things that are
Oh
not
yeah.
mainstream known history, I guess.
It's definitely interesting and fun to go off the familiar path.
Well, I guess I need to ask then. I know we don't have a Sumiko no Heather this week, so I will leave you with a question that you
Oh,
have to answer right now. Would you like historical or not historical for the next episode?
let's go. Not historical. I want to see where we go with that. And in my turn, I will have a question for our lovely listeners, if they would feel so inclined. And that is, what would you like to hear in Smiko no Heather in this year? I'm interested to hear what might be some questions that you all might have.
So not necessarily just poems. When you talked about Blue and Green, like cultural
Mhm.
tidbits or random things of interest that are very even more bite-sized than the things I talk about.
Absolutely. I want to reach out. We reach out to the listeners before, but this time I'm like, I'm curious. I want to see who has some thoughts and ideas. And if you don't, that's also okay. I like finding little bits and random pieces. So, I'm good with that. But if anyone has anything, please pass it along. That would
Yes,
be fun.
please do. We would love to do. So now that you've said mythological, I am very tempted then to continue on with our Shinto mythologies as we are getting very close to connecting it to the first emperor.
Oh, I didn't know you would I thought you said not historical. I wasn't going mythological. Mythological. I wanted to go not historical. What else could that mean? Does that give you a further challenge?
Okay, I'll have to think this over then.
You didn't. Sorry, didn't specify. You left it open. I'm so sorry.
I'm just thinking if it's not historical, what else could it be if it's not mythological or folklore? Endeavor to find something bizarre and random and not based in history.
This could be interesting. This could be fun. This could be, yeah.
I'm wondering if in Japan there's certain stories like from long ago which explain when things were unexplained, well, we didn't know why they happened, they made these stories up. For example, back in
Ah,
Babylonian times, they didn't understand why snakes shed their skin, so they had their mythological story of, well, the snake ate the flower of immortality, which is why it sheds its skin, so they live forever. It was their way of explaining why natural things in the world are how they are when they didn't understand them. And I learned that from playing the Fate Grand Order mobile game. because it's full of historical characters, including a
Learning
lot
is
of
everywhere.
Japanese ones. So just that game itself has found me many more people to talk about. And it did send 2,000 people to the website last month because
Oh,
they put a random new servant in the game, which was
you told me too, and I forgot.
one of our very first bonus episodes, our early
Yes.
episodes. The
Weather Ninja?
no, it wasn't them.
Oh,
No, it was the
you told me,
ninja
and I totally forgot.
magician
Okay, I knew there
Kashin
was
Koji. That
something.
yeah. So because there's no information on
Dang
the
it.
internet apart from my website, apparently we got 2,000 people on extra on the website this last month. So thank you,
Yay.
random mobile game, for that, I suppose. So I will love you and I will leave you, and also say goodbye to our lovely listeners. Please go rest.
It's like,
Thank you everyone for tuning in this week. That's everything from me. How about you, Heather?
I think that's going to be all for me today, but my train of thought has now completely left the station, so
It's gone. It's gone for
it's
good.
gone.
All right, everyone. So speak to you next time. Mata ne.
皆さん気をつけて、またね。